Poconos 70.3 2022, June 11th, 22. Let's get into it. The first little bit here I'm going to skip through pretty quickly here. Again, remember, I'm not a registered dietitian. If you do want one, I highly suggest you reach out to one and figure your stuff out. These are just some suggestions that I have found work great for me and a couple other people. And if that is not you, then you need to figure out or alter this based off of trial and error or through professional help. So, these next couple of slides are pretty simple, and they are pretty similar for a lot of races. So if you do want to read through these, go for it. I'm going to skip through them a little quickly here. Race day specifics or race specifics 3 weeks before. You need to figure out your pre-race breakfast and simulate that during your key training sessions. Test your gear. Nutrition should already be dialed in. If it's not, we need to get on that ASAP, so let me know. Tune up, simulate these race conditions. It probably will be a little more humid than you want it to be at this race, so simulating some of those humid conditions would be ideal here. Get your packing list in order and check your check out for the event emails that are going to be coming to you race week. Typically, that's how they do things here. So again, typical temperature range is 70s to 80s, maybe hot. It's usually pretty great or hot. Humidity, again, is going to be a driving factor on this course, so make sure you are simulating that. Heat acclimation, make sure you are simulating some similar sweat rates so you know how your body can handle some of the stress. And nutrition, race week, stay off your feet, stay hydrated, avoid a lot of extra or excess of pretty much everything except for some meals that we're going to talk about. Avoid the super zero carbohydrate drinks. You want some of those carbohydrates. Alternate between Gatorade and water or something like that. You know, that would be ideal, and it doesn't have to overdo it. So if you have one a day, that would probably be enough for a course like this, and minimize your external stress. Race week, of course, you want to get tons of sleep. You want to eat pretty normal. If you do want to do a little food load or simulate this for another key race, Monday, because this is a Saturday race, Monday should be your fat load day, and then the big breakfast should be on Friday, the day before. Charge all of your stuff, DI2, power meter, stride, all that good stuff. Race day check-in, there is a check-in day before, 3:30 to 7. There is a prologue at this race. It is a swim-run race. You do it 3 times over the course of an hour. It also says you can do as many loops as you want in the course of an hour. So if you do want to do that, let's talk on a little sidebar, and we'll discuss some of your targets and how you're going to attack that in the race. There is a prize purse for all of the races if you do them all over the weekend. Bike tech, there might be some bike tech support, but you ideally need to be having all of your issues ironed out now for bike stuff. Swim course, it's typical to be in the wetsuit area on this course. They typically expect mid to high 60s out there, so there's no real need to fret over the conditions, and as it is right now, you should be good to go. But again, they will post that the day before on Facebook. 2 days before, this is where you need to get all of your stuff done, okay? All the food you need, traveling if possible. If it's not, then knock out as many things as you can. Set everything up, get everything ready to go, so that way when you do travel or get ready to go for your race, everything is there. You just got to put it in the car and get ready. Or if you're already there, you can just sit back and relax. Day before, this is that big breakfast. This is typically what we do for the iron distance events. I am a big believer in some of this stuff, even at the half level. You might not do this in as excessive as the iron level, but there does still need to be some sort of carbo load the day before for that breakfast. You don't have to go as overboard as you do for your Ironman ones, but realize you are going to be doing an excessive amount of high intensity workout the next day. This is where you're going to be doing things like pancakes, eggs, hash browns, limiting the fat, limiting the vegetables, limiting the caffeine if possible. And then taper your foods throughout the day. Race morning. This is another meal that we like to do. This is an example of a 165-pound athlete, 3.5 cups of applesauce in the morning, about 3 hours. They're also doing some bananas, a whey protein shake, a bottle of sports drink, all the fixins. What typically works for some people is a peanut butter sandwich on top of this, and again, this is where you should be simulating some of those race day conditions now so you can iron out some of the kinks or get in the ballpark of where you need to be. Transportation to the race venue, you need to figure that all out the days before. It typically does back up around the transition area for this race, so make sure you plan for a little buffer time on race morning. These are the cutoffs for the race. Hour and 15 for the swim, 5 for the bike, and 8 for the run. The swim, let's get into the nitty-gritties. So this swim is a single loop course. You could see that the long course, that's what we're doing here. You're going to have to go around all of the buoys. Those triangle buoys are going to be your turn buoys. At every race for the Kinetic Multisport Series, the turns are hot spots for people. People like to just, they just like to be there for whatever reason. It's the weirdest phenomenon in the world. On the way out, the left-handed breathers might have a little bit of trouble with that sun. Right-handed breathers should be smooth sailing. Sun's going to rise up right in this area over here, shine over here. It is an in-water start. They have labeled that. Again, the athlete guide is not out yet, so that might change and something to keep an eye on for those pre-race emails that should be leaked out to you about a week, maybe more, before the race with a lot more juicy details. So for the first buoy or two, there is going to be a pack, there is going to be a little push, and a need for you to kind of get to the front of your pack wherever you are. After this point in time, it typically calms down. It strings out a little bit for people to calm down. If you arrive halfway down this line right here and you are still going pretty hard, you need to back down and you need to let that group go. Okay. If the group that you are with is allowing you to back down and kind of draft off of them, that is an ideal situation, and they're just going to tow you around the course. But in reality, that typically never happens, and right around here, athletes typically have to make a judgment call of, am I going to swim my race or am I going to swim somebody else's race? Swim your race right through here. This is where it starts to be your race. And again, if you can find some feet that are a little faster than you, that would be great to pull you around, especially this first turn right here. After this first turn, things are going to calm down a little bit, but when we do go back over here, you might be fighting the sun. Just depends on what's going on, where they set the buoys and all that. But usually you should be pretty good. What you do end up with is a lot of heads going a lot of different ways on the way back, and you have to figure out where you can sight the best, right? If you have an athlete that you are following and they are doing the bulk of the work, awesome, great. If not, find a landmark, or what I like to do is find the furthest buoy I can see and swim over there. These are sighting buoys right here. They're not turn buoys. Again, that could change this year, so make sure you listen for that at the athlete briefing. And the only 4 buoys that you have to go around are these triangle buoys. We're starting over here, 1 turn, 2 turn, 3 turn, and then this 4th buoy right through here, swimming on the left side of that. Long way to transition 1. There is an uphill battle right through here. It's about 200 meters. It is a little bit more. They do recommend possibly wearing some throwaway shoes or some extra shoes at this point right here. I would not wear your race shoes just in case someone else picks them up, or if you're wearing your stride power meter on that, you lose those shoes. You don't want to do that. Bike course. This is the bike course, and I'm going to skip ahead and show you a crazy graph here, right through here, and we are going to talk about this in a second. So realize all the things that I do talk about, we're going to just touch upon it right through here. This bike course does have about 3,000 feet of elevation gain. The bulk of that comes in the form of these 2 hills right through here on this course right here, and it is a looped course. So this first loop, there's a ride out to that loop, and then you do it once, twice, and then you come back into town over here. So what you can do on this little circle area right here is kind of divide it up into half. Those hills, or even thirds right here, the major hills right around mile 15 right through here, and that's going to last pretty much from this turn probably to about here right around Roland. That's going to be the major hill out on course everyone's going to be talking about. Just get up it, don't overdo it. It's going to not feel great, but you just need to stay within your limits and keep that power under control as best you can. I would expect very low cadence numbers for you. If you do start to dip below that 50 mark, then you need to reevaluate your strategy. You might want to stand up on the pedals for a little bit, or plan to bring some extra gearing with you. But once you arrive at Roland, that is a key set. Stumbling over my words. That is a key section pretty much until you get back to this turn right through here. So from Roland back to this turn, major key sections, you're going to see that on the next graph. And then once you start to turn over here, that is at excuse me, if you look down through here, that is going to be right about this point, and that's going to be a nice little downhill section over at that point. Watch out for some of these swooping turns. You can see here they do kind of lull you to sleep a little bit, and then they are filled with sharp turns right there, and another sharp turn right here. This turn right here, you will have people crashing on this turn because they are misjudging the speed. Don't be one of those people. You will have to battle wind on this course. It's just going to be a fact. Okay, it is going to be swirling a bit. Typically comes from one direction, but because of the terrain switches, the wind finds these little valleys and cocoons and just shoots out at you. So you will be battling some of the wind and expect some of those crosswind blasts at this place. It's a deceptive start. You typically overdo the first 15 miles, and that is our first little section right through here. Yield, but we do have a downhill section. Athletes are going to be flying through this point. Make sure you are watching some of those power numbers. I would take the first couple of miles to establish yourself, and then I would start to get into it because the terrain is going to slowly start to taper off, and it's going to be harder and harder to put some of that power out, especially on some of these turns right here. So that becomes an area where you need to manage your speed very, very well, so through some of those turns, and just be ready to do work, because once we start to exit some of these twisty and turny portions, which are fun, they're very fun, but once we start to exit that, that's where the real work starts. And I have circled right through here. It probably should be a little bit bigger of a circle right here, but this is where you should be putting your kind of stamp on the course on both loops. So this is the real the red area is that big hill that we talked about before, and this green section right through here is going to be the period where you should be moving through the field a little bit. Let some of these people go on the uphills, right? They're going to be overdoing it. Say this athlete, so this is 160 probably right here. You're probably going to be over your FTP for a good portion of this, or near it right through here. But afterwards, right, we are continuously on the pedals, continuously on the power, and athletes that have really shot it up, for example, if they were doing 250 plus and their threshold is 160, right, they're going to really suffer right through here, and they're going to use this downhill as a giant recovery or an opportunity to have false sense of hope. Go up the uphill at your pace. This section, use it to drive your way through the field. And this is where you're going to be, or hoping to have you make the most passes out on course on both loops. If you are not making passes on the first loop, do not panic, and I would evaluate if you are holding position or falling out the back, and then you can kind of make some adjustments based off of that. If you're falling out the back for a large majority of people, adjust what's happening. But if you're typically holding your position really well through this area, or starting to slowly creep up on people, that's exactly where you want to be right through here. And then on this next downhill section, the second time through the top curvy bits and sharp turns, right? That is going to be an area where you need to have high speed. You should be able to handle those turns a little bit more. Something you will have to battle is lap traffic on that second turn, or that second revolution around the circle. So watch out for some slower people that got released after you on the swim. Second time you're going up this big hill, blue line, right? Second time you're going up this big hill, you are going to be knowing what's going to come up, and what happens a lot of times is people come off the gas a little bit too much. Make sure you keep a mental note of your power numbers right through here, and if you felt that this section was doable, make sure you hit maybe 5 to 10 watts lower, or right around that number again, so you can push through the second key area, which is the exact same one out on course again. In this section, you should be passing a lot of people right through here. And again, if you're only passing a couple, that's okay. That's still showing that you're moving and progressing through the field. And again, if you are coming out the back and things are happening, you need to evaluate your power numbers and rethink what's been happening over the course of this bike leg. Because of the up and down nature of this course, typically what athletes do is they fuel during the downhill sections when they're not in a turn area, and then they forget to fuel in these sections up here, or vice versa. It's one of the two on this course. Make sure you are continuously putting food in you at all times, and the aid stations out here are going to be at miles 6, 16, 30, and 40, and they will have water and Gatorade. If you want something else, plan to bring it. This is USAT rules, so remember you only need 3 bike lengths in between you and the other bike. You will only, however, have 15 seconds to make that pass or let the other person pass. These are some of the examples of penalties. Make sure you read those and go to the USAT page. It's in the athlete guide. It's in the athlete guide, so make sure you read those rules as well. Bike or run course is 2 loops. One of my favorite run courses here. And of course, I did not put an elevation profile, but it is up and down big time right here. You will run out of the kind of like the alcove, the shady area, and you will run out into the elements on that back section of the course. If anyone on this has done the Reston Triathlon in Virginia, it's very similar to that kind of stuff. Very, very similar. It's kind of eerie. It is probably one of the most up and down run courses you will do probably in your career. It's just never really flat out here. You're constantly going up or down. There is a big tendency to overdo these first, I would say probably the whole first loop. But in reality, the major tendency is to overdo those first 2 or 3 miles and viewing those hills as kind of battlegrounds for those first 3 miles. It usually takes athletes a long time to kind of realize that the hills are not stopping. So make sure when you're watching your numbers, your pace numbers, you're using that in conjunction with heart rate, and most importantly, you are matching that with your perceived level of exertion. How hard is it feeling for you? And if it's feeling like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, you need to back things down. This should be endurance pace for the first, I would argue, for the first half, right? If you're feeling great after the first half, then you can kind of turn things to tempo and start to attack the hills a little bit more. But again, you need to be managing your stress here. When you do walk, make sure you are walking on the uphills of this course. That is going to be very easy to do because there's going to be quite a few. You are going to lose the least amount of time walking on those uphills and running on the downhills, even though you want to do kind of the opposite. When you get out into this back section, there's my mouse, back section right through here, you're going to be able to do a little bit more consistent running, but realize you are going to have to go back in again. So what typically happens is once they realize they can't battle every hill and the hills kind of go away enough for you to have some consistent running, people want to catch up or get to where they think they need to be out on course without realizing they're going to have to go right back again. So again, you need to be running your race. It's very easy to get sucked into running other people's races and running the course how you want, not should here. Keep those cadence, those RPMs up, and don't forget about your fueling. That's going to be another key area. On the second loop, you are actually going to run past the finish line and around a little out and back section over there before you start your second loop. Make sure you do not forget that. And again, this is your race. Watch the numbers that you are putting out based off of the key sessions that you have been doing. This isn't going to be a miracle day. You're not going to be magically running 30 seconds per mile faster on race day. It's just not how it works. So know who you are, know your numbers, and watch those on race day, because failure to do so will result in a performance that you do not want. On the run, they're going to have about every mile-ish Gatorade, water, ice, and salty snacks. I would power walk through some of these aid stations, especially on that first out and back, just because you don't know what's going to happen to your body. Save your legs a little bit, and then on that second loop, just similar to the bike, you want to be passing a lot of people, right? If you want to bring extras, this is typically a strategy that we utilize. Cliff blocks every 2 miles, maybe a gel or 2. You can have the gel in the first couple of miles on the run or the last couple on the bike, up to you, and depending on your speed, a gel or 2 extra on the run. But again, these are all key things that you should be ironing out in your nutrition plan through trial and error, and keeping a diary up on Training Peaks so we can monitor that and iron the kinks out before the race. They're also going to have Gatorade and water. I would alternate or just stick with the Gatorade out on course. That is a basic breakdown of the Poconos 70.3. If you guys have any questions, let's talk on a more personal level, and best of luck this year.